Revenge in basketball rarely arrives in neat packages. More often, it's disguised in subtle moments of grit, of persistence, of refusing to fold when every sign says the story should be over. For the Indiana Fever, that theme played out in a way so poetic it almost felt scripted. And at the center of it all stood Lexi Hull, a player who months earlier had been left bloodied by Kayla McBride's flying elbow, punished by the referees instead of protected, mocked by the cruel irony of a technical foul called on her after she was the one who took the hit. That night had left a sour taste in the mouths of fans and teammates alike. Indiana wasn't just beaten on the scoreboard, they were beaten in spirit, denied even the dignity of fair treatment. But as the season wound toward its end, fate set the stage for a rematch that became more than a game. It became personal redemption. The context surrounding that rematch was almost unbearable. This wasn't the stacked, healthy Indiana Fever fans expected to see when Caitlin Clark's arrival turned their games into sellout events. By the final stretch of the season, their roster looked like a medical chart more than a depth list. Clark's groin injury, nagging at first, was officially deemed season-ending. Sophie Cunningham tore her MCL. Sydney Colson was done after an ACL tear. Chloe BBY's knee wouldn't hold up. Aari McDonald fractured her foot. It read like an obituary for a playoff push. Nearly half the roster had vanished, and with it, many believed any real chance at surviving the grind of the WNBA. Yet what could have been an excuse for surrender became the exact opposite. Instead of folding, Indiana redefined themselves. Kelsey Mitchell exploded into the kind of scorer that rewrote franchise history, surpassing even Tamika Catchings in single-season production. 20 points per night weren't just numbers, they were lifelines. Every double team she faced, every scouting report screaming her name, couldn't stop her from being the consistent offensive punch the team desperately needed. Alongside her, Aaliyah Boston became the stabilizer, pulling down rebounds, clogging the paint, anchoring the defense, and setting a single-season rebounding record for the franchise. In a season of chaos, Boston was the constant, the insurance policy that kept Indiana from unraveling completely. But the Fever's resilience wasn't confined to their stars. Hardship signings, players called in to fill gaps, became contributors. Bench pieces stepped into larger roles with pride. Odyssey Sims came off the bench like someone possessed, proving she still belonged at this level. Ariel Powers hit back-to-back threes in the Minnesota game that broke the Lynx' spirit. Natasha Howard did the dirty work everywhere, scoring when plays broke down, defending, rebounding, keeping energy alive. Instead of a team decimated by absences, Indiana suddenly looked like a team that had forged identity in the fire. That's why their matchup with Minnesota carried so much weight. The Lynx weren't just another opponent. They were the gold standard of the league in 2025. Top of the standings, respected across the sport, the kind of franchise that defines eras. For Indiana, facing them was a measuring stick, a chance to see if all that grit was enough against the very best. And when the ball tipped, the Fever didn't hesitate. They opened with a 10-0 run that silenced doubts, dictated pace, and signaled that this wasn't survival, it was dominance. By halftime, they were in control. By the final buzzer, they had secured an 83-72 victory that reverberated far beyond the standings. It was more than a win. It was a declaration that Indiana wasn't just limping into the postseason, they were marching with momentum. For the first time since 2015, the franchise finished with a winning record, 24-20. 9 years of frustration, of rebuilds that never worked, of fans waiting for something real to believe in, finally cracked open into a tangible milestone. This wasn't mediocrity, it was a cultural reset. The kind of season where a fan base looks around and realizes their team isn't just rebuilding anymore. They're arriving, and yet, even in street clothes, Caitlin Clark remained part of the story. Cameras caught her waving for timeouts like an assistant coach, calling out defensive coverages, encouraging teammates, even sparring with refs in lighthearted exchanges. She wasn't in uniform, but her presence still hung over the floor. It was a reminder that what Indiana accomplished without her was impressive enough. But with her return, the ceiling stretched even higher. Still, the game's defining moment didn't belong to Mitchell, Boston, or even Clark's sideline presence. It belonged to Lexi Hull. In the second quarter, matched up one-on-one with Kayla McBride, the same opponent who had left her bloodied weeks earlier, Hull pulled out a hesitation move, then crossed over. McBride lunged, her balance evaporated, her legs tangled, and suddenly she was on the floor. The crowd erupted, the Fever bench exploded, and within minutes the clip had gone viral. Fans called it karma, justice, payback for the elbow, and the technical foul that should never have been. Hull didn't taunt. She didn't scream. She just played basketball, but everyone watching knew they had just witnessed a kind of poetic revenge that transcended the scoreboard. That crossover symbolized more than Hull's personal redemption. It captured the essence of the Fever's season. A team written off, battered by injuries, slapped with unfair calls, and underestimated at every turn, finding a way to fight back with resilience and dignity. Hull wasn't supposed to be a star this year. She was a role player thrown into heavy minutes because of necessity. But necessity birthed confidence, and confidence created a highlight that fans will remember as the play that summed up Indiana's grit. The Fever's win over Minnesota wasn't a fluke. It was the exclamation point on a season that tested every part of their identity. It was proof that even without Clark, the team had carved out its own credibility. And Hull's moment against McBride ensured that the game carried an emotional resonance fans couldn't stop talking about. What better way to head into the playoffs than with a highlight that doubled as redemption? Now Indiana enters the postseason not as survivors, but as contenders with swagger. Their story isn't about excuses anymore. It's about persistence, about proving they belong at the grown-ups table of playoff basketball. And if Lexi Hull's crossover is any indication, it's about showing the league they're no longer the underdog, they're the storm. So what do you think? Was Hull's ankle-breaking crossover the ultimate revenge? Can the Fever turn this late surge into a real playoff run without Clark on the floor? Let us know down in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of this remarkable ride.